in this today's class, we will talk about assertions, triggers, and the associated discussion in the active databases. And these are all part of placing advanced constraints to the database system. So, what are these advanced constraints? Complex integrity constraints are not ensured with the 5 types of constraints that we have discussed in the class. These are primary key, foreign key, not null, unique. These are the inbuilt constraints. These constraints themselves cannot accommodate the domain specific data checks that will result in inconsistency in the database. One of the examples that I can refer immediately is the assignment 3. In the assignment 3, you have been given a database of courses, list of courses offered by the faculty. And one of the questions that has been asked is that list the courses whose credit structure is incorrect. And by that we mean LTPC is the lecture, tutorial, practical, and the total credits. They must adhere to the ordinance given credit structure. We cannot have 3000 a credit structure, and you all have understood how to first of all identify such rows in the database. But the question is that it is not about identifying such kind of incorrect rows in the database or tables, but instead we wanted to disallow them at the time of insertion and updation. Right? So from this perspective, the constraints that we have discussed are of little use, because these constraint, particular constraint, will span across columns and within the same table, and it is dependent on the rows that are inserted. So these things, not only at the time of insertion, but at the time of updation as well, these things must be honored. At all points in time, these credit structure must be honored, and that is part of the integrity constraints of the data with respect to the courses. And if you see such kind of errors, the competition, further competition will be affected. For example, if I wanted to compute the CPA of the student based on these incorrect structures, then it will result in CPA in computation, incorrect computations. So the thing is that how to address such kind of advanced constraints in the databases. Of course, by now you might also have understood that these have to be understood through queries, not through straightforward inbuilt functionality. Right? As we have done using the views, we have to place queries to understand such kind of events. So complex integrity constraints are of can be viewed in two cases. One, when the constraints are playing on one single table, and when constraints are playing on multiple tables, more than one table. Right? And in this particular case, we first will discuss a single table case, and then see how to understand the advanced integrity constraints. Right? And one of the construct that is used for placing these constraints, what is called as table constraints, is the check. This is the this is the thing that we use in addressing the complex integrity constraints. check is a part of the SQL standards, but it is not implemented in MySQL. MySQL understands what is it that you wanted to achieve, but it will not honor this particular construct, right? This is only with respect to the vendor specific implementations, as you already by now are familiar. Some things are part of the SQL standard, but it is not implemented in MySQL. So these are the things that we should not get surprised. But as a general concept of honoring the complex integrity constraints, how databases accommodate such kind of requirements, right? So the check is what we will be using, and check what it actually does is that it will check for a conditional expression that is being given to it. So the and here assuming that we have a single table, and then this table is essentially the sailors table containing 4 columns as the textbook example. We wanted to ensure that the rating is between always 1 and 10. Even though you please now please you can actually analyze this one, is that rating is an integer type, data type. An integer can take values which essentially are beyond the rating that is being given to the sailors. It will accommodate a huge spectrum of values than what the domain that demands. Rating demands only values between 1 and 10, but integer by itself will accommodate more number of values. And to constrain the value range of the rating, you can adopt 2 strategies. One, you say that in the databases, you will accommodate all the values that integer can accommodate, but it is the responsibility of the programmer application programmer who is using your table. Versus we take care of these things within the database itself. And what is expected is that it is expected of the databases that such kinds of constraints are placed within the database itself. And to ensure this one, what is it that we do is that we place this check constraint saying that rating must be between 1 and 10. I mean, seemingly very simple, but that is what, let's say, it will ensure that if it is true, then the record will be inserted. For example, if you are trying to insert a record with having 4 values, before insertion, this check constraints will be activated, and then it ensures that rating is between 1 and 10. And if this one results in true, then the new record will be inserted into the sailors table. Otherwise, if this particular conditional expression results in false, then that record insertion will not be successful, right? So that is what is the thing that can potentially, that is the functionality that happens with respect to the check. Now you see, it is not only checks whether it is true or false, but it will allow or disallow a record to insert or update, also kind of taken care by this constraint. So this one happens to be a constraint on one table. On a single table, you might be having several check constraints, or you can have several table constraints. Now, but what if you have constraints that are spreading across multiple tables? So another multiple examples over here is this. This is the thing that at the time of table creation, see, note that we're always doing all these check conditions at the time of table creation, right? Not independent of the table creation. So now the second thing is that the second complex integrity constraint is that we wanted to insert only those records such that boat named Interlake cannot be reserved by a sailor. So that is, if that is the constraint, then we will essentially incorporate that at the time of reservations, because we should not allow an Interlake boat, a boat named Interlake, to be reserved. So you have to understand that where this constraint is playing, and then appropriately incorporate this check constraint. Right. So we have three tables, and we know that it is at the time of reservation, Interlake boat cannot be reserved. So we will place this constraint on the table reserves. So we try to create a reserves table with SID, BID, and reservation data. These are the kind of constraint that we have been playing with all around so far. So now what is the new thing is that here is the new thing is that we are creating a constraint named no Interlake reservations, and the thing that we are trying to check is that we select all the boat names from the boats table which is joined with the reserves table. Implicitly this reserves joining is happening here. Please note this one. We are not performing join explicitly. And what is actually happening? That boat ID should be equal to reserves. In the reserves table, there is a boat ID, and that name is not in Interlake. Then we will allow the insertion operation or updation operation. So these constraints can span across multiple tables, more than one table. And this will affect the way that you perform insertion and deletion and updation with respect to the constraint that you are placed at the time of table creation. Now what actually happens is that when more than one table is involved, these constraints becomes much more complex and cumbersome as well. And also it so happens that our constraints, even though we are actually placing them with the hope that they should do what we thought they should do, many times it will kind of dishonor because of the erroneous constraints that we populate in. It is not because the statements are erroneous. It is because when you place them together, it will essentially result in an error. So I'll just give an example. And this example is as follows, that I wanted to place a constraint on the sailors relation such that the number of sailors and then the number of boats should not be more than or equal to 100. Seemingly a simple constraint, and the way that we are placing this constraint is that you count the number of sailors from the sailors table and count the number of boats from the boats table, add these two counts, and then check if this count is less than or equal to 100. And this results in true, you will include the record in the sailors relation. Well, seemingly there is no specific issue with respect to this particular table constraint. What happens is that this constraint will get activated only when you insert or update the sailors table. It will not get activated when the boats table is subjected to insertions, which means that you can potentially have more than 100 rows in the boats table. You can potentially insert more than 100 rows in the boats table, and this constraint will never get activated. Is this clear?
Sir, can you explain it again, sir?
Okay, so this constraint is placed on only the sailors table, and we are counting the number of sailors in the sailors table and number of boats in the boats table at the time of insertion of a record into the sailors table. but then there is no constraint on the boards table.
Yes, sir.
So now I can insert more than 100 rows in the boards table.
Oh,
So
okay.
what is the total count here when you wanted to now assume that there are no sailors to begin with. And then you kept inserting the row records in the boards table. So that the boards table has more than 100 records. Right? So these constraints will potentially get violated. Right? Now you can actually add more records into the sailors table. So together should not exceed more than 100. That is the intent. Intent is that the number of sailors and number of boats put together should not increase 100. And since two tables are in under the constraint, this constraint must apply to both the tables. It cannot apply to only sailors table alone.
Yes, sir.
Then,
Got it, sir. Yes, sir.
yes. So the question is that these are the kind of things that will create issues when more than two tables are involved. And you might immediately come up with a solution that, well, you include this constraint in the boards relation as well, boards table as well. But of course, such kind of things are much more complex and maintaining the database code also becomes much more difficult. And to accommodate such kind of complex integrity constraints, what is known as the assertions are used. Oh, I forgot to. Right. Here. Yes. To accommodate such kind of multiple tables, constraints spanning on multiple tables, we can use what is called as assertions. And these assertions are, you have seen in programming languages. Have you seen assertions in the programming languages?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
C++?
Yes.
Somebody saying
Assert
yes.
statement.
Assert statements are there, right?
Yeah.
Right. So they check whether the state of the data pertaining to the variables or the state, particularly whatever the programming state, whether it is honored or not. And if it is violates, it will exit. Of course, it exits gracefully. So here the assertions can play the similar role, but they will spread across multiple tables. It need not be that assertions certainly must spread across multiple tables. All that we are trying to do is that logically that we bring out this constraint out of the table creation, and then say that create an assert saying that small club, and then we perform this check. Now the assertion is that small club that contains the sailors and then the boats whose count is less than 100, less than or equal to 100. Now this assertion, what it will try to do is that even if you perform an insertion operation on sailors or boats, this assertion will be activated, and then it will check for the constraint that you have placed to honor this constraint. Now this constraint can be much more complex, right? This is only a kind of example, textbook example constraints. There could be multiple domain specific integrity constraints that must be honored. Right? You will also see, and then we'll also learn through various ways how to identify domain specific constraints and then how to place them on the database. One of the things that I can immediately refer to you is that the LTPC the credit structure within the courses offered, list of courses offered, must be honored, right? And you might have seen that there are some courses for which the LTPC is not honored. Yes? Okay. So now unfortunately both assertions and check are not implemented in MySQL. Once again, these are part of the SQL standards, and then these are all available in the commercial database implementations. This is only for the completeness sake we are discussing over here. With respect to other kinds of active databases, we look at what is called as triggers. And for the first time, we will actually see that this is the most powerful form of the database construct that is available for us in a reactive way, not proactive way. We'll see what is the meaning of it, right? So what these triggers will do is that it's not that, see why such kind of things are required is that these constraints, whatever that we are placing in over here, be it a primary key, be it checking these ratings or checking these things, may not always occur at the time of insertion. So you also wanted to take actions at the time of insertions. We'll look at that one. So what it means is that if we are trying to insert one record, so let us go through these slides and then we'll, because this is much more sequentially oriented, structurally oriented, I'll go through the slides. So triggers are a series of actions associated with insertion, updation and deletion queries. You have understood what is an insert, what is an update and then what is a delete statement. And these are performed on a single table or multiple tables. It can be done on the single or multiple tables. But when the insertion gets successful, you will only see that the table that in which you are trying to insert a record gets reflected, that insertion gets reflected, and then you come out of that one with successful insertion. Right? But what is it that we wanted to do is that we wanted to take an action before or after insertion. Right? And that is why triggers are known as event condition action rules or ECA rules. On an event, you check for a condition and take an action. So this event is on insert, on update, on delete. The condition is whatever the condition this programmer, database programmer has specified, and an action is the database programmer has specified. So these are more of a theory, we'll just skip this one. And triggers will associate, so these actual events, as I told you, that it's at the time of insertion, at the time of updation and deletion, you can specify what is it that action that you want to take in the form of a program or a function or whatever that you want. And triggers enforce the complex data integrity check than what check cannot actually achieve. Some things check can achieve, some things check cannot achieve. And what check can achieve is that it will check the action that you wanted to perform, that is insert, on the table alone. But it cannot modify other tables. So we'll look at that, what these differences are also, and not immediately, I will not jump. So now what it means is that we will be able to place triggers on the tables, and then we can create triggers, we can alter triggers, and then we can drop triggers on the tables. So triggers are always associated with the tables. Just like check is always associated with the table, check is associated with the table. So must be the trigger. So you must specify this trigger is associated with A table. Okay. And now is the another important thing that we wanted to also understand is that do you wanted to take the, you have to specify the event and we are saying that event is insertion, for example. And if this is insertion, we wanted to also specify whether you wanted to execute the action before you perform the insertion on this table or after you perform the insertion. That is the thing that we wanted to do. And then other thing that can associate. Once one example is specified, you will understand what is it that we are trying to point out. So the actions could be that we'll go to that one. So let me take up the example, then you will be able to understand this particular trigger much more easily. So assume that I have a table named account. It has two columns, account number and an amount. So for every account number, there is an associated amount, right, that can be deposited into the account. And what is the bank would be interested in is that it is interested in the total deposits that are being made to the bank. So total deposits of course can be done through a simple query. Once again, you please note that this is a very example query to discuss about the triggers. The same requirement can be achieved through a simple SQL statement. So assuming that we wanted to every time an amount gets deposited into the bank, we wanted to track what is the sum of what is the total amount that is being deposited in the variable sum. Particularly, we wanted to look at whenever it is deposited, which means that whenever we are actually inserting a record into the account table. And we wanted to do this one before the insertion action takes place. Some operation should be performed even before this tuple 1, 2, 3 and then 50 rupees is inserted into the accounts table. So how to achieve this one? Let us go through this example. We are creating a table, account number to be integer and an amount is floating point number. And for the first time you will see the initialization of variables. So you don't get confused. We will discuss when we talk about the database programming. But for now, this is what you can take it for a minute is that sum is a variable. It's a global variable set to 0. And now we wanted to create a trigger, right? We wanted to place a trigger, and then the trigger is that before insertion we wanted to update the sum value. That is the objective that we want to achieve. So the way that we do is that we create a trigger with a name. Trigger has a name, and we will say that before we insert a record in the accounts table, which means that we say that create a trigger name before insertion on the accounts table. And what is it that we are trying to do? For each row that gets affected on the accounts table, you execute this one. So here, what is it that we are trying to execute? We are updating this variable sum with the value of the sum that you are about to insert. So there is a record that you wanted to insert 1, 2, 3 and then amount is 50 rupees. That 1, 2, 3 and 50 rupees is not part of the accounts table. See, accounts table might have 100 records. But 1, 2, 3 and 50 rupees is yet to insert. And then that yet to insert record has a notation that is we'll also look at much more detailedly. That amount 50 rupees we will add to the sum. So we'll see. So this is what is the trigger that we have created. And every time you make an insertion statement, some gets automatically activated and some trigger gets activated and some gets updated. And then if you say that, well, print the sum value, it will say that this is the total amount that is deposited into this bank. Right? So now, what is the advantage of it? You do not need to run a very specific SQL. You do not need to run an SQL to understand the value of sum. Right? So any questions here? Let me just take a minute and then ask.
Sir, in this trigger example, why it is written for each row? What are the rows that we are adding that value?
Okay, we will come to that one. See, that is not a part of the syntax. That has some implication. We will get to that one. See, here when you are actually inserting a record, account table is not getting, assume that account table has 100 records. Is your insert has any effect on the 100 records?
We need to just update the sum.
No, it's not update, it's insert. You wanted to insert. See, you have 100 deposits that have happened. One at once deposit has any bearing on these 100 deposits? No. Right? You will include one more row into the accounts table. Right?
Yes, sir.
So now we will see that there are cases where the accounts table itself gets affected. At that point in time, this for each row will kick in, right? I mean, this is only a very specific example to introduce a very simple trigger, right? And even if you, for a minute, even if you don't understand this for each row, since the accounts table does not get affected by your insert statement, you can assume safely that this for each statement has no relevance in this particular example. Whenever there is a relevance, we will talk about that one. Okay. So now here is the another example that I have 10 records of the sailors table. I wanted to insert 11th sailors table, 11th record in the sailors table. And this particular slide has been introduced to make you understand the notation new dot amount. Right? See, amount is the column in the accounts table. And to refer to amount, you can say account dot amount. But what is new dot amount? So that is what we will discuss about it. That assume that you have 10 sailors records in this particular example. You wanted to insert 11th record. Now 11th record must be somewhere in the main memory, but not on the table, not on the hard disk. So at the time of insertion, and it is also a record, which means that it is also a table in its capacity, its own capacity. It's a table. And SQL, how it will differentiate the existing old records versus the new record that you wanted to insert. The way that it distinguishes is that all the records that are there in the sailors table at the snapshot before insertion are denoted as old.sid. Old.name, these are all the old records, these are all the old ratings, these are all the old ages. Now the insert statement, when you are actually saying insert into sailor, these values 99 sailor 9 and 37, this is itself is a record. It is not part of the sailors table as of now, till insertion gets succeeded. So what internally database will do is that it's a table in which it's a new table that I wanted to include, that records of this new table I wanted to include into this sailors table. But the way that I distinguish this table versus this table is that all these records are referred to as new.sid, new.name, new.rating and new. And whenever you are invoking the, say that you refer to the new record and then do the comparison. So that is what that happens. So you can, over here you can assume that new account number and then new amount will be there. These are all the old account numbers and then these are all the old amounts. So now you say that to the sum you add a new amount. So that's what actually happens. So that is the name naming convention in the triggers. Right. So here we try to insert for the insert. This is the thing. In this, these are the insert statements. This is the new dot account number. This is new dot amount. This is the new dot account number, and this is the new dot amount. And when we are saying that new dot sum, this record, this value is added to the sum value. Right? That is what actually happens. Okay, fine. Yes.
If we already have some data in the in our table, and then we are applying that trigger. So would that trigger be updated for the previous old data as well? Like if we already inserted 10 values, then we wrote the code for that trigger. So will that 10 values affect the value of the sum? Or after that, the values that we insert, only those will affect?
I could not understand. Vineet, I did not understand your question.
Like if we already have 3 values in our table, sales table.
Account table. Okay.
Yeah. So and then we are applying the trigger for the sum that you wrote.
So wait a minute. See, trigger will be activated the moment you do an insert. See, first insert statement.
If we wrote the code of the trigger only after the 3 insert statements, like in the MySQL or.
Okay. I got what you're saying, that one. See, this trigger must be whenever you write. See, it is immaterial when you write, before the creation of the table or whatever it may be. Right? Or you have an account table that is populated with 100 rows. Then you have started writing a trigger on the account table. Right? The new records that are getting inserted, for them this gets activated.
Okay, sir.
See, assume that account table has already 10 records. You have created a trigger when the account table has already populated with 10 records. Okay? Now, after writing this trigger, what is this trigger? Says that whenever an insert statement happens on account table, you invoke this entire code. So now you ask this question that has any insert statement, SQL statement has occurred for the previous 10 records? Already been done. Insert has already been done. You have not done any insertion.
Yes, sir.
So now 11th record, if you wanted to include, how do you include using SQL statement?
Insert into like
the moment you write insert to the database, immediately trigger will come in.
Okay. So for the previous values, it won't be counting, right?
So you have already performed insertions, and there is no trigger.
Yes, sir.
You get? Right? So whenever there is a trigger that has been placed, after that, it will check for the insertion operation, will check for whether there are any triggers on the table. If there are, then they will be invoked.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So we will look at one more example with respect to trigger. This is once again a very simple trigger. We say that create a trigger. And what is it that we do? That we wanted to update update amount must be always between 0 and 100. If the amount is more than 100, we'll say that it is 100. If it is less than 100, we'll clamp it to 0. And less than 0, we'll clamp it to 0. So the way that we do is that create trigger before update statement. See, now you are actually, you look at, we are actually specifying what is the event that we wanted to do on and invoke the trigger on. See, earlier what we said, create a trigger before insert. Here we are saying create a trigger before update. Right? You can create a trigger before delete option, operation. Right? Such kind of thing that you can do it. You can also say that create a trigger after update. After you update the table, what is this table? Accounts table, you perform an action. So in this particular code, what is that we're trying to do is that before an update takes place, for every row that update gets affected, we specify that values to be 0 or otherwise. Right? This is a simple if-else statement, and you can go through that. So now I'll just give you a little bit involved example. Then you will be able to understand complete picture of what these triggers are trying to do. Let us say I have 4 tables, table 1, table 2, table 3, table 4. Table 1 has 1 column, so is table 2. Table 3 has 2 columns. Table 4 has 2 columns. Right? And table 4 has a default constraint as well. We'll see what it means. So now what we are trying to do is that we will see these are the 4 tables that we have created, and we have created a trigger as well. We have created a trigger before insert on the first table. What we are trying to do, before you are actually inserting one record into the first table, we are inserting another record into the second table. We are deleting a record from the third table. We are updating a record in the fourth table. So one action on the first table has resulted in 3 actions on your 3 tables, second table, third table, fourth table. Okay, and we will see that, these are the syntactic things, you must honor them, right? So now we will look at what is, through an example, what actually happens. So we have inserted in table 3 and table 4 these values. Assume that you already have inserted. This is the state of the database. These insertions will populate these tables, table 3 and table 4. Okay. Now we will say that first insertion we are trying to do onto first table. And here is your trigger. You are inserting a record into where? Table 1. Right? So there is a trigger on table 1. I mean, what is this trigger actually trying to do? Before this insertion happens into table 1, these actions must take place. Okay. So now we will see that one. Before you insert value 1 into table 1, a value of 1 will be inserted into table 2. And since there is a 1 in the table 3, that 1 will be deleted from table 3. And then table 4, B4 is updated. Update B4 to B4 plus 1. Okay. So now we will see second insert statement. We are inserting 1 record into table 1. Its value is 3. And this is the trigger on table 1 itself. And then this insert, before record 3 is inserted, a record is inserted into table 3. A record is deleted from table 3. And then a record is updated from table 4. And this procedure continues. As you keep inserting a record into table 1, 3 actions simultaneously takes place on table 2, table 3, table 4. Only after these 3 statements are completed, a record will be inserted into table 1. That's it. Any questions here?
So, what were those delimiter used for?
Oh, so this delimiter is for every SQL statement, the end of the SQL statement is denoted with semicolon. Right?
Yes, sir.
But within a trigger, there are several statements. And trigger itself is a statement for database. So now how to differentiate between the delimiter of the trigger with the delimiter of the statements within the trigger?
Okay, sir.
So first you have to rewrite the delimiter to something like pipe. So whenever till you encounter a pipe, that is the trigger statement. Right? And also you please note that you are actually making begin and end blocks. Right? You are actually saying that this is the beginning of the trigger and this is the end of the trigger. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And after the trigger is completed, you are resetting the delimiter to semicolon. Right? These are the part of the syntax. Otherwise, you cannot load the trigger onto the database, sir.
Yes, sir.
And one more thing that I just wanted to tell you is that these triggers are the objects that will be residing within the database. This entire code is lies in the database, not outside the scope of the database. Now, what actually happens is that these, as you have now seen, that one insert statement can have cascading effect on multiple tables. And multiple operations can potentially be performed. Right? So now you can say that you can, of course, this is only one trigger that you have set on one table. Right? So, but before going into the other details, just let me ask if there are any questions from you. Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll go ahead. So then you can now create multiple triggers on the same table. Or you can create multiple triggers on multiple tables. Right? How we will do that one is that you will see how to do this one. For example, it would have been better if I had represented this graphically, but anyway, so not an issue. So you have placed a trigger on table 1 before an certain operation has taken place. You can also place another trigger on same table 1 after insertion has been done. You can also do that one. When before insert and after insert, you can have two triggers. Right? So you can have multiple triggers on the same table. And you can actually order them that, well, which trigger must first follow. Whether that is what, let's say, we have to kind of specify. When multiple triggers exist on the same table, they must be ordered. Right? The order is essentially specified that. Why? Because whether you wanted to execute first trigger 1 or trigger 2. Which trigger that you have to execute. That you have to specify. And the way that you specify is that you have to specify through some notation. We'll look at that one. So trigger 1, first trigger 1 must execute on table 1. Then trigger 2 must execute on same table 1. And so on and so forth. Because when the triggers are exist on the same table, you have to order the triggers. Which trigger I must first execute. Right? Then the way that you actually try to say is that trigger 2 follows trigger 1. Trigger 3 follows trigger 2. And so on and so forth. And the way that you do is that create a trigger before insertion on table 1 follows trigger 2, something like that. So table 1 must follow trigger 2, table 2. Or if you say create trigger T2 after insertion on table 1 follows table 2, follows trigger 1, which means that this order will be honored. This order essentially is that trigger 2 must be invoked after trigger 1 is invoked. And if you have trigger 3 on the same table, you can order them using follows or precedes. And you have to say which one it actually follows or which one precedes. We'll give some example. Let us say I have table 2 and I have a trigger on table 1. And what is this table 1 says? Before update, you essentially have a trigger on table 1. So now I have an updation operation that actually has taken place. Update T1. So I'm actually saying that a trigger is there on table 1. What is this trigger? It's an update action. Whenever update is happening on table 1, before I perform update, I must do this one. I must do this one. So now what is this state of the table 1? This is the table 1 state. So I perform an update operation on table 1. Update operation on table 1, which means that I am actually updating the value. Simply, maximum price I am actually updating from 194 to 200. Right? So now, before this statement takes place, what this trigger says that update, insert some record into table 2. So that is what actually happens. So before this update on table 1 happens, table 2 kind of gets updated, but there is no multiple triggers. Where the multiple trigger actually happens, let us see what that happens. I have table 3. And table 3 follows this trigger before product update. So before product update, where is the trigger? This is the trigger. So before this trigger takes place, this trigger will get initiated. Okay. So now what actually happens is that this update operation, two triggers are playing on the same table 1 and on same update action. So now these two triggers will be ordered. Right? And the price will be updated accordingly. So anyway, I'll try to kind of make it in a more visual way so that it is conveyed the message. Any questions? Okay then, thank you. And if there are no questions, we will continue from the next class. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Hello.